Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Hoyt from AllCITY DLLS, and I am here with Eric Woodyard from ESPN. Eric, how you doing?
Man, I'm good, man. I'm blessed, man. No complaints at all, man. I'm doing good.
Awesome, and well, thank you for joining us to go behind enemy lines and give us a preview of a game that is, we just played this last year, and man, there were some fireworks at the end of that one, Eric. Obviously, some controversy, some multiple attempts to kind of win the game by the Lions that ultimately didn't come into fruition. Is this a game that's on the mind of Lions players kind of heading into this game? Maybe a little bit of revenge and trying to kind of win back from what happened last year.
I'm gonna tell you two sides. So it's what they told the media, and it's what I know they feel. So we talked to Jared Goff, Aidan Hutchinson. They give the typical, oh, it's just another game, 1 week at a time. I'm a Ross St. Brown, the same thing, 1 week at a time. But I did talk to a player off the record. They would say they could tell you all that. I won't say his name, but they can tell you all that to the media. But this is different. Even if it wasn't a controversial ending, it's Detroit versus Dallas. They haven't beat Dallas since 2013. So these Lions are still trying to change so many losing narratives. Although they've been getting a lot of positive attention. So guys, don't forget that inside that locker room, they really want this win, man.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny the dichotomy between what's said and what's actually felt, and I feel like we're gonna feel this game once the kickoff starts on Sunday. Let's talk about kind of the last game the Lions played, and the big story from that one, Jared Goff was literally perfect, 18 of 18, and that's something that even Deron Bland said this week. He's like, man, that is impressive, and coming from a guy who owns the pick six record, I think that's a good compliment. How would you assess the state of Jared Goff's game? I know this is a guy that the Rams kind of shipped off, but it really feels like he's found a home with the Lions. And how much would you kind of attribute a little bit to just this running game they got going? Between Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, averaging both over 4.5 yards a carry.
I think number one, you got to start with the offensive line, man. I mean, they're protecting them. They're really letting him have the time. And then number two, he got so many weapons. Offensively, obviously you got the backfield and Gibbs and Montgomery, but you also got so many weapons that you can choose from, and those guys are doing what they need to do. So this offense is just tailor-made for Jared Goff to shine. And, the city has welcomed him. You hear Jared Goff chants literally at Red Wings, at Tigers games, the most odd places. So I think a combination of that, rebuilding his confidence. He came here obviously at a low point of his career, and he's kind of just revitalized himself. And he has the general manager support, who was over there at the Rams with him. He has Dan Campbell support, and they just built this team tailor made around him. They also gave him a extension this offseason, and I mean he's thriving in all of that right now.
Yeah, go way back when I played a 7-on-7 game against Jared Goff in high school, and he
Wow.
wasn't perfect that day, but you can see the kind of talent that would eventually translate to what he's doing now, and he's been impressive. You mentioned weapons. One of those is Jameson Williams, a guy that you wrote a big feature on. Cowboys fans, go check that out. A really good job by Eric. But the other weapon that we always got to think about when you think about the Lions is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was absolutely fantastic last season. He's a guy that can line up in multiple places, but kind of splits time between the slot and outside. And if he's in the slot, he's going to go up against Detroit native Jordan Lewis, who's perhaps playing the best football of his career right now. How, in terms of Amon-Ra St. Brown, how much of a weapon is he, and how do the Lions not only utilize him in motion, which is kind of a big topic around here, but also tight end Sam Laporta?
Yeah, I mean, Laporta's kind of got off to a slow start this year. I mean, he had a hamstring injury coming into the season, so he's still kind of working his way in. I know some of the fantasy people probably like, what's going on with Laporta? But it's they're kind of just still working him in. And just to be honest, the emergence of Jameson Williams is probably taking a little bit away of those targets that he was getting last year. But with Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's the most disciplined, most fundamentally sound, most probably toughest weapon that the Lions do have, because he can do so many things. Even if he's not catching or in the slot or on the outside, he's blocking. He just has an overall competitive spirit and competitive nature, and he's going to take on that challenge. He's ready to go out there, man. I mean, that guy is, he doesn't need much of a push, to be motivated for these types of games. He's ready to go. So that he's used in a plethora of ways, but any way that they need him, I mean, he delivers. So you'll see him a little bit all over the place, honestly.
Yeah. Quick pivot a little bit to let's talk about Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit, of two guys that when I think of explosive, I'll be honest, those are two of the guys that come to my mind immediately across the league. Just how explosive are these two when they get going? And obviously David Montgomery is just kind of the solid, steady. We saw that one play where he literally just, I that blew my mind. The one where he shook off a guy and kind of ended up running for another 20 yards. How explosive can this Lions offense be?
I feel like they haven't even really scratched the full surface of how good they can be just yet. I mean, that's what when Brad Holmes, the general manager, was putting his team together. This is how he saw it. He took a lot of criticism for getting Jahmyr Gibbs. It sounds crazy right now, but for picking him, and this is how they saw him, fitting into their offense and what they needed. So, definitely these guys are super explosive, and now you're finally seeing Jameson Williams kind of launch and seeing what he's able to do. So it just makes this offense so dangerous. And then you got the steady guys, the St. Browns, who's going to do what he's going to do. We know what Montgomery's going to do, but these guys can just literally, change the game in one particular play. They don't need many targets, really, not Jameson Williams, but all he needs is one big one. And that's kind of the scary part of this team. When you add a guy like that, you haven't really saw much of him in the last 2 years. Obviously, the gambling suspension, the injury, and he's kind of coming into his own. As you said, I wrote a big story out on him. Spent a few months with him and his family, and this is a season where he really took personal, man. He really worked hard. He's really matured in a lot of ways. I think that's an underrated aspect of why he's able to do what he's able to do. He's lining up correctly. He's doing the small things that people might not see. That's kind of paying off for him big time right now.
Mm-hmm. Cowboys fans, go check out that story on ESPN.com. Eric did a fantastic job with it.
It took me months, man. It took me like 3 months to write that story, man. So check it out, yo. I appreciate it.
Hey, good things take time, right?
Yeah.
What didn't take time was the development of Aidan Hutchinson, it feels like. And this is a guy, the Cowboys have faced Myles Garrett. They faced TJ Watt. They faced Nick Herbig, who kind of looked like TJ Watt Jr. last week against the Cowboys. And now they got Aidan Hutchinson, who is just in that elite tier of pass rushers. The interesting thing I want to touch about with him, Eric, is the fact of where does he line up? Because last week we saw TJ Watt line up pretty much exclusively over right tackle Terrence Steele. Aidan Hutchinson will move both over. He kind of almost splits time between lining up over the right side and the left side. And if he's going up against the left side, he's going up against the left tackle and Tyler Guyton, who's not only been struggling his rookie year, but is a little bit hampered with a knee injury, and he's expected to play. What do you make of Aidan Hutchinson in terms of how to utilize him and just overall state of his game going up against the Cowboys this weekend?
Yeah, he's the anchor of the defense, man. I mean, it starts with Hutch, just that tenaciousness, man, and what he's able to do. I mean, he's leading the league in sacks through the first 4 weeks. And, I think he really came out this season and he really, perfected his game and got better and better and better. And he was another one of those guys, very intentional pick, number 2 overall. And I think he's really, just coming into his own at this point and being patient. I think a lot of time he was just chasing the sacks so much in those first couple of years, but I think now he's being patient. He's added some moves to his repertoire. I also did a big story on him a couple of weeks ago as well, where I got a lot of different legends to talk about, what he was able to do as well. And that was great as well to hear the feedback around the league and, from legends of what he's able to do. So, yeah, he's coming to his own. He'll probably be on both sides. And if it's any mismatch, he's going to take advantage. I mean, we saw what he had 3 sacks and a half. That was versus Tampa Bay, I believe, if I'm correct on that. So yeah, man, that guy he's tenacious, and they better be ready, man. He's bringing it every single play.
Yeah, it feels like the Cowboys can't escape some of these elite passers. They got Nick Bosa after this game too, so it just keeps going and going. A quick pivot a little bit to the secondary. I know that they've added a lot of pieces. It's a different secondary from the year before. Kind of what can you do? Tell us about this Lions secondary. Kind of preview that a little bit. I know they got Duncanville alum Ennis Rakestraw, who's excited to get home and play his hometown Cowboys.
Yeah, I think they're still figuring it out. That's one of the weak points of this team is the secondary right now. They've been getting a lot of pass interference calls. Obviously got Terrion Arnold, the rookie, who's kind of still figuring it out, man. Carlton Davis. They've just been playing super aggressive, which Dan Campbell and, the defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, they're pressing that for them to be aggressive, and they don't want to take that away, but they've been going a little bit overboard in these games a little bit. So that'll be something to watch to see, how aggressive will they be or teeter on that line of you don't want to keep picking up these pass interferences. So that's been something to really watch. Ennis Rakestraw, they really like him. They're really trying to work him into the defense a little more, a bigger role. But right now, those main guys, obviously Terrion Arnold, and you got Carlton Davis as well out there. So, they just been super aggressive, getting a lot of penalties, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Eric, one of my favorite stats about the Lions, and it's something I asked a lot of Cowboys players and coaches about this week, was every team that's played the Lions this season has lost. And not only have they lost, they've lost by a margin, I think it's 87 points the following week. Long story short, people theorize that when you're going against the Lions, it's going to be a battle that kind of takes something out of you going into the next week. Luckily for the Cowboys, when I asked Dak Prescott this, he pointed out, yeah, we have a bye next week, so they're ready to kind of go and kind of bow up and have a battle. But long question short, I know Dan Campbell. He speaking of flag, when you mentioned Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell got a little flag for the biting kneecaps comment, but it seems that he's got a toughness that translates throughout this entire team. Really long question short for you, Eric. How tough is this Lions team?
Super tough, man. I mean, that's how, even when they were 3-13-1, Dan Campbell's first year, he was preaching grit. And you see the type of guys that were brought on this roster are gritty guys. they want to, wear you down. That's why you probably see a lot of those teams the following week, lose because it's a battle. It's tough. You know what I mean? Like Dan Campbell, obviously Texas guy. He's coming back home. He's tough, man, and he's the ultimate leader. He knows how to, really connect with these players, and he's really changed this culture. I'm from Michigan. It hasn't been a better leader in my lifetime that I've saw, than Dan Campbell that's coming in Detroit and change things around. So I think it starts with him, and that's where the toughness starts from. He's pushing it, and these guys are getting after it. They still have a chip on their shoulder, even though they went to the NFC Championship, last year. I think they feel like they left a lot of meat on the bone last year. That's what you hear a lot of guys. We left a lot of meat. We left a lot of, what I'm saying? And I think they're trying to come back and really, get back to that level, and it starts week by week. And all these little storylines throughout the season, they're taking them seriously. They lost in Dallas. They haven't beat them since 2013. They hear the positive, but they hear the negatives as well. And I think that's just motivating, and it starts with Dan Campbell.
Cowboys under Jerry Jones can say a lot of things, and sometimes you question what he means. One thing I've never questioned is whenever Dan Campbell gets brought up with Jerry Jones, he's effusive in his praise of him and just how tough. And I think that's something, that kind of grit is something that he wants the Cowboys to play with too. All right, speaking of the Cowboys and Lions, score prediction, Eric, if you don't mind. What X factor are you paying attention to, and who do you think ends up winning the showdown?
We talked about him earlier, but I still think it's that Jameson Williams X factor because it's just all he needs is one or two catches, and it could be a 67-yard play. So I got Lions 26-20. I think they're gonna get revenge from last year. And they got this one circled on the calendar.
Will we see an extra offensive lineman declare eligible? That's probably the biggest question.
I'll be watching just like you to see.
There you go. Well, hey, Cowboys fans, check out Eric. He's on Twitter or X at @E_Woodyard. Obviously, check out some of this great work on ESPN.com. We've mentioned a couple features already. Eric, thank you so much in allowing us to go behind enemy lines and preview this game.
Man, I appreciate you, man. Anytime, man. Thank you, man.
We all silly like the mayor.